Hey, it's Andrew here, and welcome to the E-commerce Fuel Podcast, the show dedicated to helping 7- and 8-figure e-commerce brand owners build incredible businesses and amazing lives. And today on the show, joined by someone who has a tremendous amount of experience investing in the e-commerce space, building DTC companies, sourcing, pretty impressive background and resume and just track record. Also someone who's a relatively newer member to the e-commerce fuel community, kind of came in and just dropped a ton of knowledge with some really deep sourcing posts, which we'll link up to in the show notes. But I'm talking about, of course, Jason Wong. He's the managing partner at Pug.Haus, which is an investment company. He's made a bunch of SaaS e-commerce investments, as well as the founder of Doe Lashes, which is a DTC eyelash-focused beauty brand that he's built pretty impressively over the last 2 to 3 years. So we're going to be talking about processes. Man, you got to be a real e-commerce geek if you're going to stick around for a podcast around processes. But for the real faithful out there, I think you'll enjoy it. Processes. We're going to talk about building Doe. We're going to talk about building one-person massive AI companies, and also talk about investing, kind of to wrap things up. But Jason, welcome, man, and thanks for being in the community. You've been phenomenal, like I said before we started recording.
Thanks for the intro. I feel like an athlete walking out of the arena.
we need to get some like jock jams. I think you're probably, I don't know if you're too young probably to remember, but in my heyday, man, you'd like go out and you get the jock jams podcast going. We'll, or the soundtrack. Well, maybe we can put that in After Effects, but of course, great to have you here. So thanks for being here.
Of course.
Let's talk processes first. What's your philosophy on processes? And how do you we'll get into how you document them and what software and all this kind of stuff. But how do you think about processes in general? Because you do so much stuff and processes have to be a huge foundational element of that. Some people I know like to detail absolutely everything. Some people say, man, if you're process driven too much, then you're just not hiring good people. You should let them do their thing. What's your philosophy on processes for running a business?
I think it's a hybrid. It cannot be too granular where you cannot do literally anything else. And it cannot be too broad where there's room for error. So I always like to look at processes like building blocks. I'm a big Lego nerd. So I like to visualize if I built a process, how do I build this piece of Lego? So what is the foundation, right? What is the principle behind the process, and what is the end goal for it? And if I were to create this process and each of these stages, each of these building blocks, at the end of each step, what is the end desired goal? And is there any other way to do it better? And is there room for us to improve on it? So I'll build a very vague skeleton of a process. Let's just say for us to do an RFQ for a customer. All right. If a customer comes in and gives us information, what are all the things that we need from them? There's usually a standardized form. So that's pretty granular. Like the questions that we'll ask our customers, pretty standardized. But then how we work with our customers is very different depending on the type of products that they make. If they just want us to print stuff on a book, very easy. If they want us to redesign a Bluetooth headphone for them, a little bit harder. So we leave certain stages of our process for certain rooms and certain stages of processes for more creativity and for some extra work. But overall, the skeleton should all have the same end goal. As long as the end goal for each of the stage is the same, what comes in between can be a little more flexible.
And obviously you have teams that help out with a lot of this stuff. And you also mentioned, one thing I forgot to mention in your intro was you also own a sourcing company called Sauce House.
Yeah.
A lot of houses on this side of your experience here. But so you help companies, DTC brands, with their sourcing. I'm guessing in Asia and other places as well, in the US perhaps. But on going back to the process side of things, so let's say you're building out that process for an RFQ. What does it look like? Like you're very operational, which I think is great. I mean, you're very in the trenches. Like some people think like, hey, you start building these things and you can step away and let everyone else build it. You're very in the trenches, operational. How much of that RFQ process are you actually outlining and then handing off to team members to kind of codify and put into your systems? Or do you do the whole thing? How involved are you? And let's use that as an example. Like how would you sit down and create that process? Would you do the whole thing and hand it off to your team? Or would you give the high level kind of skeleton and then hand it off to a member of your team who would then kind of really flesh it out and put it in your system?
I actually get the senior members of my sourcing team to all make our own version of an RFQ. So when we were first designing that process, this is before we had one, when we were first designing a more standardized process. Because for a period of time, we're just doing what everyone else is doing. You send some stuff over email, we'll get you a sample, and then we'll try to make it in production. And a lot of mistakes were made. So we said, okay, three of us, let's sit down and make our own version of what we think the right customer journey should be from the beginning to the end. And after a few days of working on it, we all presented to each other. And then we're like, okay, I like that you have this. I didn't have this in my process, but I would like to add to it. And we literally just Frankenstein the best version based on what we think is the most efficient, because we're all poking on each other's holes. So if you're a one-man team, you probably have to do this exercise yourself, whereas you create different scenarios of what you think could work. And then you start asking yourself, what makes this better than this other one? Can I use this in certain scenarios versus this? But in my case, we made a practice that everyone to make their own version and then talk about it amongst each other and say, okay, we now know this is how we will all do these three things. If the end result is the same, what are some of the steps that we could add in to build security? And what are some of the things that we can remove to take out inefficiencies? And that's how we made our own process.
I love that, like a collaborative brainstorming approach and cherry picking the best. And then so you get all these ideas, you kind of flush out what the best process is, high level. Now it's time to actually codify it and put it in your system. What do you use? Do you have someone on your team that does that? And also, what kind of software do you use some kind of fancy software for doing all this stuff? Do you have just Google Docs and Asana? How do you organize it all?
No fancy CRM for sourcing. We use ClickUp, and we try to tweak it to work. Of course, having your own CRM with your own branding and exactly how you want it is ideal. But we felt that we could get what we need to get done at least 95% of the time with just ClickUp. And so we basically create each of the steps in our process into clickable projects and checklists within ClickUp. So, for example, did we send a contract out to the client? Did we take their intake form? Did we receive their wire transformation? These are checkboxes. There's really no other way for you to do certain things, and those things are checklists. And then there are certain things where we need to do extra inspections. Certain products that are a little bit more complex will add in extra steps for that. So it's a very hybrid model of certain parts of a process is very granular, where you cannot do it any other way. And there are certain things where you leave room for your team to make the best judgment on if you need to add in extra steps to create a better RFQ sheet, or if you need to take things out because it's a much simpler project.
Yeah, for ClickUp, I've heard of ClickUp a ton of times. I've seen people demo it. I think myself included, and I think a decent number of other people who haven't used it, they hear about it a lot, but they're like, how is it really different from, let's say, Asana or Trello or something like that? So is there a big difference? Like, is there something ClickUp does that's actually more helpful than those other kind of task management tools, or is it just your flavor of choice that you work with? Is there any
I
reason
actually
somebody...
I migrate from Asana actually. I like ClickUp because it was just a place for us to consolidate all our documents and storage in one single place.
Yeah.
When we were on Asana, we still had to leverage Google Sheets for
Mhm.
documentation. We still had to use a cloud storage, whereas for ClickUp, we can kind of have it all in one single place. And also the automation part was very helpful. So we love to geek out on automation, and I'm not sure, maybe Asana has updated their software to do what we need to get done. But we built certain automations where when certain tasks are done, it will send notifications to stakeholders in the projects through Slack, through wherever, so that we are constantly in comms. Certain stuff like you can click a button on ClickUp or change the status, and it'll automatically send a DocuSign to our customer to sign. And when they send it back, we could parse our inbox to see signature has been confirmed, and we can set it to tick the box that it's been signed. Like we make certain things to make our life a little bit easier that we felt was only possible with ClickUp.
How does that parsing work? So it'll actually go through, you'll get the confirmation email that, it's the document has been signed. Is that
Mm-hmm.
an integration with Gmail, or do you have to custom code that? Because that's super cool.
We Zapiered it.
Zapier. Ah,
Yeah,
okay.
so you parse the text to identify, for example, signature received, and then name. If the name matches the name that's on the file for our clients, then we then we consider it the same. It's very unlikely that you get two people the same name doing it, although this is a system where if two people the same name came to us at the same time, it will fail. But, again, we're Frankensteining something to work at a very low budget.
Yeah. What are some of these other? Oh man, this gets me all hot and bothered. I love this kind of stuff. What are some of the other automations you're using when you're building processes and systems specifically? Like you mentioned those, but are there any others that come to mind that you have implemented that have saved your time a lot of work, and or either processes or automations or software that you leverage to do this?
I think like the most important thing for automation at the very base level is checking things. If you're able to remove yourself from checking things,
Yeah.
you easily save yourself hours in a week. So checking our inventory levels, making sure that our payments were received. If we didn't get paid on an invoice, we send a message to our fulfillment center to stop fulfillment, because our fulfillment centers don't know when our client has paid us or not, right? Because we're managing the fulfillment center. So for all they know, they're just packing orders for a client who's not paying us, right? So if we're able to say, hey, if this client has not paid us and it's been 3 days, send a message to the warehouse leader to pause fulfillment for this client. And then send an automatic message to our client to as first message. If not, escalate it to a team leader to personally reach out to the client. Like there's certain things that you could do that replaces the manual need to check on things. I wouldn't trust automation to do and execute on a project just yet. Maybe with the right AI tools, which we'll cover later on, we could. But right now, it's just checking. It's like checking stocks in the fridge. That's all we get it to do.
Yeah. And this is actually a really good segue into that. I always ask anyone who comes on the show, like, what are you most excited about? Where if I just kind of start talking about it, you'd be happy to sit down over a drink and like just, kind of geek out on it for like 4 hours. And you mentioned AI a little sheepishly a little bit because I think you're like, because everyone's geeking out about AI and so original, right? But the thing that you thought was so fascinating about it, and I agree, is the ability with AI to be able to build just very meaningful single person companies leveraging the technology. So talk a little bit about that, if you would, like maybe kind of the promise you see, and maybe if there's any specific AI technologies that either have already hit the ground or are coming soon that you think hold the most promise for this.
Yeah. What got me really interested into AI was automation, which we just talked about. And for me, automation was like if I could ask myself if I could have 10 extra pairs of eyes on what's going on, how would I do it? So the most simple version of something like that is if you go on Google Alerts and type in, if anyone mentions e-commerce field, send me a Google alert, right? Typically, you have to go and personally go find that on Google. But you're like, if I want someone to keep an eye on it, I want that. So my version of automation was I want 10 pairs of eyes, 100 pairs of eyes on things that really matters and move the needle for the business. If a customer leaves a 1-star review, automatically notify me, automatically create a ticket, talk to a customer and say, hey, we just got your review. Is there anything we could do better for you? Like keeping an eye on the reviews, keeping an eye on inventory, keeping an eye on comments, keeping an eye on X, Y, and Z. That's automation. Now, the next level of AI is the execution. It's like things that can actually go out and do stuff for you, help you understand the data. And I read this tweet the other day, I forgot who it's from. And they were saying like in the next few years, we're going to see a lot of $25 million companies, pretty mid-sized companies run by one or two people with the use of AI. And it's a hot take because you're talking about displacing a lot of people out of the workforce. But it also addresses something that I feel like not a lot of people talk about unless you're a founder, which is the increasing cost of operations. And the cost of human labor has increased a lot naturally because of inflation, something that we as business owners cannot really control. But unfortunately, it's very hard for our margins to scale with the cost of operations. It's unrealistic for any business to increase a price just like that. So what do? We kind of just eat it. So we'll take a smaller profit and then we hope for the best. But if you're able to automate a big part of your business that doesn't really require that much strategy and a lot of the thinking that humans can do that machines just can't do yet, then you're able to cut back on a lot of your operation expenses. So I'll give you some example. Bookkeeping. We've automated our bookkeeping already. We're using something like a Finaloop, and it's
Sorry to interrupt. Is that what you're actually using?
yeah, we're using Finaloop
How's
for
how's that working for you? I mean, you're using it. Is it obviously well enough that you're using it for your accounting? But is it scale of 0 to 10? Uh, is it yeah? How's it working for you? What are the shortcomings? And are you investor in it or no? Just kind of give us the details on that.
no, not affiliate, not even an ad here. I actually use the product. They did reach out to me to work on like a co-marketing campaign, but I said I will not do it unless I've used your product. So they reached out to me last year to do something with me, and I said, let me be a customer for a few months before I consider even talking about you guys. And it made a lot of sense to me because I feel like if I was able to automate my bookkeeping early on, I would
Mm-hmm.
have been able to make better decisions in my business. A lot of the challenges of running a business is that you don't really know whether or not you can do certain decisions because you don't know where your cash positions are. And you typically close your books a few days after the month. So if you want to know what you need to do today, you kind of wish and hope that you still have money a month from now when the books are closed because you're probably running on credit. So because we're now able to do real-time cash flow analysis, we know what are our upcoming liabilities and how much money we can spend today, how much money we can spend tomorrow, and generally just being able to make better decisions and just taking that like bookkeeper work out of my CFO. So my CFO previously was doing all the bookkeeping. Yes, we still have tools back then like Xero or QuickBooks, but still the need to go in and categorize all these transactions and contextualize it is very challenging. So now it frees up his time to do actual strategy on, okay, where do we want to be in 2 years? Where we want to be in 5 years? So that was one thing that we did. The next thing was AI for customer support. Previously, if you're scaling an e-commerce brand, you're gonna have 5 or 6 customer support agents, whether that's US or overseas. You still need humans for it. And I recently advised a company called Sienna that does ChatGPT powered customer support. So it'll contextualize your tone, your brand, and how you usually resolve tickets and do the same thing for your customers. So if a customer is a VIP, is purchased a few times, that bot knows to treat that VIP a little bit different than someone who just came in and bought a $10 item. And it'll learn how we resolve tickets, how we resolve returns, and just take that action for us. And that right off the bat took like 5 people out of the need to do customer support. But we're probably wondering, okay, does that mean everyone's out of a job? And I don't think so. I don't think it's as bad as that. It just means that I'm able to upskill those people into higher level thinking. Okay, if people are now answering the basic customer support tickets, can my support agent who knows my customers and knows my product well spend more time strategizing how to improve customer experiences, strategizing how do we get them to refer their friend, and then training the machines to do that. Like humans are still needed, but they're just going to be upskilled into a more strategy level. And then we're going to see stuff like data analysis. Like right now, if I go into my store and I want to find out who are my best customers and what are the stuff that they buy, it takes me a little bit of time. At a much larger company, you have a full-time data analyst getting paid 70
Mm-hmm.
grand a year doing it. I think there will be a time where AI will have all the data that you have on your store, on your Facebook account, uh, being able to read through all your reviews, being able to read through other people's reviews, your social media comments, basically anything that you would read as a human, AI will be able to digest, and you can go to AI and say, okay, what was the campaign that I ran 2 weeks ago that led to this increase in revenue? They'll be like, okay, here's the number. Well, what do you think this will affect us in the next few weeks because we're not running promotion anymore? Do you think there's going to be X, Y, and Z? They're like, yeah, I think there's going to be a decrease in returning customer rate because the people who usually buy have bought it 2 weeks ago. Like they'll be able to tell you what's going on just like that, like really fast. And I can make actions. I can take actions and make decisions really fast. Whereas for a data analyst, typically you gotta need like a day or two to give you that kind of data and maybe even help you understand it. So all I'm really saying is that like a lot of the things that we do right now and have to hire a lot of people for, we could condense it into a co-pilot, right? Like a co-pilot that would just tell you if you need to turn left or right.
Yeah.
And that's how you got to run a lot of these like 1 or 2 man companies, is because you don't need a lot of people just to tell you what to do. Anything that needs to tell you as a CEO can be replaced by AI down the line.
Yeah. Have you played with, or have you had a chance to get? Is either code interpreter or data interpreter? It's the plugin for ChatGPT. If anyone's listening and has an in at OpenAI, or you actually work at OpenAI, I've been trying to get access to that. It's still in waitlist only. Like we do the state of the merchant report where we get a ton, unholy amount of data from store owners, and then it takes like weeks just logging away at a spreadsheet. It's probably doing it the old fashioned way to be able to get some of these correlation and insights. But with what it looks like that can do, you can just dump that all in, dump the data file in, ask it questions, and it will automatically give you answers and charts. I'm with you. I'm hugely bullish on the future of small, like as an entrepreneur, man, it was a good time to be alive 10, 15 years ago. It's even better now because it's taking execution has always been so important, but it's taking all of the frictional parts with people for some of the execution and making those less costly so that you can focus personally and your team can focus, just like you said, on like the exciting stuff, the fun stuff. So what do you think really matters if we're coming into a world where it's possible to build a 30-40 million dollar top line single or two person brand powered by AI? Like I think things like reputation matter, branding matters a lot more, like storytelling, understanding customers, things like that. I think incumbents probably have an advantage in this position as well. What do you think like really matters if execution is less important or easier? What would you be focusing on, obsessing over trying to build a one person business with AI?
Product, product, and relentlessly looking for product market fit. I think a lot of early business owners go through that same problems that I just talked about that hopefully will be solved by AI. Is that if you're just starting out and you don't have money to hire people, you're a one-man team, you're
Hmm.
so busy doing 20, 30 things. And, we joke about every founder having to wear 100 hats,
Hmm.
but no one, no one's talking about if you just not have to wear 100 hat, how much better your product will be. Like the thing that you're known for, how much better it will be if you didn't have to put up with all the other stuff,
Yeah.
right? Like if you're a chef, you should just focus on making really good dish. If you're a chef and you're also an owner, you're gotta worry about management, you gotta worry about finances, you gotta worry about marketing. It's a lot, right? So at the end of the day, what will really be sticky is a really good product and a bunch of people who think your product is a hair on fire solution. um, there's not going to be a lot of brands just to exist, just purely to exist. I think brands will be tougher to sustain down the line because everyone will have access to the same tools. So it all comes down to product. You could do really good marketing, get someone to buy a really bad product, but you'll never get them to buy it again, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I think focusing on a product and letting other people and other AIs do the work that you probably aren't that good at will be how you're going to scale to a $30-40 million company. Now, um, I'm excited about that because I cannot imagine the amount of people who had great ideas and great opportunities, but never were able to reach their full potential because they were so bogged down by everything else. I've known so many people like that, talented founders who
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately couldn't get to where they need to be because all their money is spent on hiring people, having high operating expenses. They're running on thin ice, and then eventually they get eaten up. But great product. Like I wish they existed. And so, you know, I think this is a tool that will really democratize and even the playing field for small businesses. Small businesses that doesn't have, 100, 200, 500 employees, right? And they're able to run just a lot leaner. But because it will get easier to do, it's also easier to start companies. And it's
Mm-hmm.
also going to be easier for markets to get saturated, which means that for you to truly succeed, you need to have a really badass product.
So would you say safe to say short term, this is a huge advantage for existing companies. Long term, it's going to just raise the stakes even more on how good you have to be. So is that safe to say in
Yeah,
your opinion?
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
I think it's a good thing. I think it's a
Hmm.
great thing. If you make this thing happen and it's easier for anyone to start, it also means that everyone else also have to spend a lot more time innovating. when you're in a period like this, people don't really innovate because it's so easy for you to just start a DTC brand, hiring an agency for $80,000 to design some colorful packaging for you, and just say, "Hey, we are the next best thing." It's so easy to do that, and people can see right through it now. There needs to be a very strong right to exist for you as a brand if you want to make it. And I think with all the new tools and an increased competition, it's going to drive more innovation.
Yeah, it'll be good for consumers for sure. Um, a little bit of a sidebar, but on the topic of AI, I was actually just having lunch with a good friend who he's thinking about making potentially a career shift or addition. And AI was one of the topics that came up. And he's asking how to do it. And my advice to him was, and find an area of AI that you can either a subset that you can really understand deeply, or a problem set that you can use existing AI tools to solve really well. And kind of become kind of go into the market right there. You mentioned earlier before we hopped on, you're really good at putting pieces together and seeing where opportunities are and things like that. If you were having lunch with him, or I imagine there's people listening too that are super interested in building businesses around AI, and maybe even like a services plus AI model, what would you encourage people to go into? I'm kind of blindsiding you with this question, but it's an interesting one.
Yeah, I think like any businesses that can help people make way more money as a baseline is gotta be a great business. So in that sense, I'm thinking about like enablement. Like, can we make a size chart obsolete with AI? Right?
Hmm.
When you're shopping online, can we just take out size chart? Is there a way for you to buy things more accurately? Can we use AI as a browser extension? Can you build a browser extensions that knows a lot about you? So when you go visit a website, it'll only show you things that are relevant to what you want to read. Like there's a lot of applications for AI that it's all a wild west right now. But I think the ones that win have to be have to have a ocean that's large enough that it makes sense. You cannot just make another feature. You have to make an actual like product, an actual company. A lot of the AI tools that I'm seeing right now are features. And it goes back to the same thing that we saw 20 years ago. Is like, you need to build a product, not a feature. When people are coming into a startup scene, I think people are seeing the same thing in AI. With how easy it is to code stuff, you could go to ChatGPT to learn how to build a mobile app in the next 30 minutes after this podcast if you really want to, right? So even on the developer side, not just the Shopify merchant side, even on the developer side, things are getting tougher.
Hmm.
Competitions are a lot stiffer. 15 years ago, you can make an app and you can be a millionaire. Nowadays, you can make an app because your 6-year-old can also make an app, right? So you really, really need to know how to make something special. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. I want to move on to talk about Doe, but one last question in my notes here, that going way back to processes when we talked about in my research, you mentioned a tool called Alloy for automation. And I've heard about it, but I'm not familiar with it. I'm guessing a lot of people also aren't familiar with it. Can you talk about what it is, what it does, and how it helps you run your business more leanly?
Yeah, I think of Alloy kind of like a Plaid for Shopify. Plaid, the
Hmm.
payment app. The challenge with a lot of the apps in the Shopify ecosystem right now is that they don't talk to each other, and that's the missing piece. When apps can talk to each other, they can do very powerful things. If you're able to get Gorgeous to talk to Okendo, and getting Okendo to send anytime there's a 1 to 3 star review to go to Gorgeous and create ticket, that's a powerful thing, right?
Hmm.
There's thousands of apps in the Shopify ecosystem that just don't talk to each other, but if you combine them together, you can do some really meaningful impact to your revenue. And so Alloy is kind of like that tool to connect everyone. So instead of having a lot of these companies having to build their own portal with each other, you have one single thing that could help connect all these tools together. Now, they've been launching some new stuff recently that I haven't fully caught up on, so I'm gonna be missing where the company direction is. But that's how we think about using Alloy. It's like the key that allows us to open a lot of doors with different apps that we use.
Is it unfair to call it a Zapier for Shopify apps?
That's what people will say.
Okay,
Yeah,
got it.
the question is like, oh, why don't Zapier just build it, right? And I get this question quite often when I talk about it. I have no affiliation with Alloy, by the way. I just love their product. But the Zapier is so broad that it makes products for everything. every Internet of Things out there, Zapier will do. But Shopify's app ecosystem is completely different than where Asana lives, because Shopify lives in its own little planet. And so for you to make something work within this little planet, you need to make something that actually fits them, not something that's very universal. So what Zapier's infrastructure is built on isn't very scalable if you want to just onboard a few thousand Shopify stores, Shopify apps, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Thanks. Let's talk about Doe. So Doe Lashes, this is the DTC business that you've built up over the last 3 years. So they're fashion eyelashes, kind of glue on or glue on eyelashes, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
What's the genesis for it? Why did you start? I guess I'm guessing you probably weren't the one using the product.
No.
Why do you get into it?
Yeah, great question. No one looks at me and say, "Yeah, you definitely wear a lot of eyelashes." And
I mean, they're beautiful. Jason, I'm looking at you here. You have beautiful eyelashes, but
thank you,
I
thank
just had
you.
a hunch.
They are. I had no clue about eyelashes up until 4 years ago. Like nothing. Never touched them in my life until 4 years ago. And I got this idea because of two reasons. One was I had a challenge to myself. I wanted to build a brand with $500. So I said, I'm going to give myself a $500 budget. Let me see what I can do with it. And a second thing was I noticed that there was a big problem, or a gap in the market of false lashes. So I was dating a girl at the time who wore a lot of eyelashes, and we go to a lot of concerts, music festivals where everyone around me was wearing eyelashes. So I was like, okay, I could literally see my customers, potential customers, using a product that I could potentially make. Let me go talk to them. And when I talk to every single one of them, they all complain to me about the same thing. They're irritating, they're uncomfortable. I cannot wear them all day. When I wear them, it makes my eyes look droopy, kind of weights them down. Like no one likes it. And I was like, okay, it feels like this is a product that no one thought was interesting enough to innovate, because it's just a pair of eyelashes. Like who wanted to go reinvent lip balm? And tell a couple companies did, but like it's one of those like boring products that no one thought about. And I like to make the comparison to high heels. Lashes on the market up until Doe was like high heels. You wear them because they're pretty, they make you look taller, but you cannot wait till you can take them off at the end of the day. Like you just dread having to stand in them for 8 hours a day. So why can't we make the sneakers? So Doe was really the sneakers in a world of high heels. We wanted to create something so comfortable that you don't feel like you're wearing anything. And that was my entire philosophy. It's like I want to make comfortable beauty products that you can wear all day. It'll look good. It doesn't look fake. Fake lashes doesn't look fake is one of the lines that we use, because when you look at fake lashes on a lot of people, they clearly look like they just got glued on. We make lashes that when you put on, it actually looks like you grew them. And it's kind of a crazy thing to say, but I made the band at a specific thickness that when you put it onto your eyelids, it's not heavy enough to weigh down your eyelids, but it's not so thin that it's very fragile and it breaks. So there's a perfect thickness that we were able to master. And the hair that we use is a synthetic silk, and it's 0.03 millimeters, meaning that it's as close as to your real eyelashes as we can get. And when you pair these two together, you get something that you don't feel when you wear it, and you get something that doesn't look fake. So that's the whole premise of the product. But why I started was just so I could fill this challenge. I was like, I'm gonna make something of $500, and I need a good idea for it. So I took $500. I spent $440 of that on inventory, $29 on Shopify plan, $9.99 on a domain, and with 400 some dollars, I bought 200 pairs of lashes, because on your first order you're not gonna get the best pricing, so we paid a lot of money for it. So 200 some pairs of lashes. That's after shipping. I sent half of them into nano influencers, and the other half to be sold. But the nano influencers that I picked wasn't just a shoot and pray type of model where you just send it to everyone. I went after people who had great potential to make good content, but they're not big yet. Like I literally feel like Scooter Braun discovering Justin Bieber. Like I literally look for people who had a lot of potential. And then I also look at who was around them. So I went after a pod model, because I found that if you want to work with a really big creator, you probably cannot get them right off the bat. You have to get them to know your brand. They're more likely to work with you if they know about your
Mm-hmm.
brand. So what I do, I find my actual creator I want to work with, and I look for the nano influencers around them, and I start building pods. Pod 1, 3 creators. Pod 2, 5 creators. Pod 3, 3 creators. And so I'll sponsor the people around them, and then I'll hit the one that I actually want. And by that time, there's 4 people promoting it. Why does this work? It's because creators typically cross promote with each other. That's how they grow. I have 10,000 followers, you have 10,000 followers. I'll retweet your stuff, you retweet my stuff. So there's a lot of audience overlap. When an audience see a single influencer post about something, they're like, they're just posting about it. If they see 4 of the people that they follow posting about the same thing, yeah, they're still gonna be like, yeah, it's probably still an ad. But something within them will say, okay, now I'm curious. If 4 people agree to promote this product, let me go check it out. So through the pod system, we're able to work with influencers without any pay. We're just doing seeding. I send out 100 pairs of lashes, turn that 100 pair of gifted product into $10,000 in revenue. Use that, buy more inventory, send more and more and more and more.
So you
Not,
from that
Mhm.
original $500, what have you grown the business to in top line, bottom line, whatever you're comfortable sharing? Like, and have you put additional capital in, or have you grown the whole thing bootstrap from $500?
Oh no, we bootstrapped it with my own money, and we've of course taken short-term loans as well.
Mm-hmm.
We've used all the loans that are currently out in the market, and definitely made some early mistakes, taking ones that we shouldn't have taken. And it goes back to the mistakes of finances. Like if you don't know what you actually have in terms of your cash, you tend to realize that you're in deep trouble when it's too late.
Yeah.
And so that's why, like right now, whenever I talk to founders, I've always talked and tell them, make sure that you are having great financial literacy. Like learn the basics of understanding your P&L, learn the basics of doing cash flow analysis. Even if you think it's going to be a little tedious work, just make the effort to do your own books for the first little while to really understand how your numbers look. That was something that I wish I did earlier on. So, we've never taken outside capital. It's always been the money that I invested in because I have other companies that I have, so that my sourcing agencies, my consulting, I basically just use the money that I have to reinvest back into the business. So I'm 100% of the owner of it. We grew, our first year we did 0 to $100,000. Second year we did a million. So we grew 100 to a million, and then a million to 2 afterwards. So we just keep snowballing from there, just reinvesting whatever we make back into it. I've never paid myself a salary from the brand. I've always, just made money from the actual business I had, because at the end of the day, it was an experiment for me. This is fun for me. I don't sell lashes because I want to create a whole career out of lashes, or because I want to be like a king of lashes. I really want to create it because I thought it was a fun project for me. I think that's where I get to be creative. I get to use that company to be the sandbox for all the technology investments that I make. So like anytime that there's a new investment that I make, I use it on my own brand first. And if I really like it, then I'll put a check in. That's during the DD process. So that's kind of like the flywheel of it. So I have my sourcing agency that's able to source good product for me at the lowest cost. I take in clients to increase my volume, and through the volume, I get everyone better pricing, including our own brand. So our product is always going to be the most cost efficient because of our sourcing agency. Then through the sourcing agency, I'm able to service all these other brands, including myself. Within my own DDC brand, I'm able to try out all the technology that I'm investing in, which gives me a better confidence to invest into that company, which is the investment side of the holding company. A little messy the way that I just draw it out, but I promise you, it's kind of like a flywheel.
No, I see it. It's kind of like Amazon when they were like, "Oh, hey, we got to build out these server services for our own business. Might as well productize them and make them available for other people." So it makes total sense. Plus, what you're probably your best. If you're your customer, kind of cliche, but if you're your customer, then you know how to serve the market the best. What you had mentioned that you made a mistake of trying to expand your SKU collection account too early, and it was not a good idea. Like it was a bad idea. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like why the downside of going too broad too quickly in your case?
Growing our product assortment, you mean?
Yeah, yep, growing your product assortment too fast.
Yeah, that was a mistake because if you're a bootstrap company, there's only so much you can have at the end of the day to reinvest back into new products and expansions. And we were kind of expanding our company as if we had a lot more money than we did. And the challenge of a new category is that it's not just buying new inventory, right? Inventory is just one thing. It's the money that you need to market it. The money that you need to add in for photo shoots. Like a photo shoot's 20-25 grand, and a single piece of inventory, it's $80,000-$100,000. That's money sitting that will not move and not materialize into cash for you for 4-6 months. And you do that enough times in a single year, you put yourself in a pretty bad spot if one of them doesn't hit. So you're constantly gambling on the collection working out. And we thankfully have a lot of collections that did work out, but the ones that didn't push us back a lot. And the challenge with small companies that are just starting up is that we often look at companies that we aspire to be. If you're starting up a beauty company, you're looking at the L'Oreal's of the world. You're looking at a $50 million company. You're looking at $1 billion company. You're like, man, I want to launch this because they just launched this. They're launching products 8 times a year. I want to do it 6-7 times a year, without realizing that we don't have the same amount of ammo. We really don't. And so when you're trying to follow in the footstep of these larger companies, one slip, you fall into a really bad spot. That's what I've learned. So that's probably like one of my biggest mistakes, was trying to grow too fast because I want us to be a bigger company. My ambitions got way too ahead of me.
What you alluded to this a couple questions ago, but you said financing, like you took some bad loans or made some bad financing decisions, and we've had a lot of talk in the forums. Bill D started a great thread talking about um, the actual APR rates on some of the merchant cash advance loans from like Shopify or PayPal or Amazon. Once you bake it out, and they're pretty catastrophic. Or the catastrophic, they're really high, and not that they can't sometimes make sense, but they're much higher than you would guess just by looking at the terms. What what were some of the mistakes you made in the financing journey? And then when you're looking at financing today for your business, what what's the best option you see for funding growth, especially inventory purchases?
Yeah, the early mistakes I made was not understanding the terms. It's looking back, it's very obvious. But if you're not a finance person, you have no interest in finance, which is me. I'm a product person. I don't want to talk about numbers. I don't want to touch my numbers. But now I'm like, okay, I have to. But back then, let's just say like PayPal gave me an offer for $100,000 capital, your principal, and they're only gonna charge you, I think at that time, $13,000 on top of it. They're like, oh, $13,000 on a 100K loan, pretty market standard, but we deduct payment every single week. Like it was like 2,600 a week from PayPal. I think that was the worst offer that we've gotten. But I took it because I was in a bad place. We were scaling one of our store from zero to $1 million in 1 month, and in the second month we did $2.3 million, and we scaled so fast that PayPal flagged our account and held $800,000 of our money in PayPal. So I literally didn't have money to pay my vendors and my employees. And ironically, the person who lended me the money was PayPal Capital. They called me and said, "Hey, we have an offer for you, $100,000 and a $13,000 on top." And I was like, "You guys know that the reason why I even have to take this is because you guys held our money." And they're like, "Well, PayPal Capital is a different company than the PayPal platform that you use, yada yada yada." So, dude, I literally had no other choice. I didn't have money to pay my employees or my vendors. I had to take that loan. And that
Oh,
took me so long to pay off. And then the next thing was ClearBank. ClearBank was a tough one for me too, and the same reason too. Because we have so much money of our own money locked up, and we have liabilities like Facebook ads you got to pay off, Amex you got to pay off. I had to take ClearCo. Um, and that put us behind a lot too. So just like not understanding these terms, the payback period, the remittance term, and even like the actual loan amount and how that affects the payback window really put me in a bad place. And I just wish that, I'm glad that people are talking about it now, but like 3 years ago, no one was talking about this, because this model will work if your company is growing at a certain pace, and you're not stacking them. When a company is able to stack multiple lenders together, you're getting 15% to PayPal, 15% to Shopify, 15% to whoever. And that's 30% of your top line revenue gone every single day. Daily remittance, that's how they usually operate now. You fall into a death spiral. You literally will never recover from that unless you have exponential growth that allows you to get enough cash flow to pay that off early and get out of it. But the problem is that growth like that hasn't been seen in our space for at least the past year and a half. So that's why so many companies are defaulting. That's why like all these challenges with all these MCAs is because merchants literally cannot get out of that hole.
Mm-hmm. What about what's working for marketing for you now? You mentioned the influencer model with the pods and kind of like working your way up to the big fish by, kind of like starting to work with some of the people in their kind of the big fish's pond, so to speak. Super interesting. I'm sure it's still working to some degree now. But what do that was 2-3 years ago when you started the brand. What are you seeing working well now for you to drive sales and growth? Is it, Facebook, TikTok? What's working well for you in May of 2023?
Facebook is still consistent. I wouldn't say it's doing well. We're not getting 6-7x ROAS like we were back in the day, but it's
What
profitable.
what's profitable ROAS for you?
For us, as long as we're above 1.5, we're good.
Okay.
Yeah. So as long as we're above 1.5, we're clear. But the thing is, like, most of our traffic comes in from organic anyway, so it kind of balances out. Our MER is generally in a much healthier spot because we're not entirely dependent on the fluctuation of paid ads platform. So we spend a lot of time thinking through proper affiliate partnerships. We're thinking through influencer marketing. We're still doing a lot of influencer seeding. And what I've learned is that, especially for beauty, you don't want to just put something on your face because you saw a Facebook ad on it. You want to put it on your face because you see someone that you feel related to recommend it to you, like a friend. So we've been going after a lot more nano influencers, people who are like your friend next door, who have somewhat of an audience and going for volume there. And then the next thing that we're doing is just organic content, like building a great audience online through content that has potential to go viral is, I think, one of the ways that we offset our dependence on paid ads.
Which platforms for organic content?
Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, TikTok, but TikTok's gotten a lot worse for us than 2 years ago.
Hmm.
A lot more
Are,
competitive.
are you doing that all in house? Like, do you have creators that you hire? Are you contract basing them and sending them product, or how do you do all that, create all that
Yeah.
content?
Yeah, we have a contractor group. So a group of few contractors where we pay them per views. So we have a CPM model with them. Nothing risky for us up front because we're not paying per video. What we found is that when you pay per video, there's a lot of risks and downsides that you cannot really forecast. Um, because you could pay a creator $50 to make a video and they might get 100 views or it might get 10,000 views. And oftentimes it's on the lower end. Um, so we kind of switched this model and said, hey, we're going to give you a CPM model where the videos that you make for us, we'll just pay you on that CPM. And what that translates to is that people aren't just making videos just to set a deliverable. They're now
Mm-hmm.
thinking a little bit more about how do they get the most views out of their videos. So they're a little bit more strategic, a little bit more creative than just saying, oh, I have to make a 30-second video for this dough company. Let me just put it on my eyes and then take it off. That's one deliverable, right? So we're shifting the way that they think about their content by putting it on a CPM model.
What was that? Where you find like, I am not super deep into the influencer content kind of space like that. So maybe this is more common than I realized, but it doesn't sound like a real common kind of, it makes perfect sense from an incentives perspective, like your incentives
Mm-hmm.
are aligned, which is perfect. But
Yeah.
is that something you have to educate a lot of the people you reach out to about that model? Is it hard to get them to sign up? And where are you finding them? Like, it seems like it might require a little upfront education and you might get a lot of people passing on that because they got to perform for it to get paid, more or less.
Oh, absolutely. It's not an easy sell. Easy sell is saying I'll pay $2,000 for a video. Everyone's got to gobble that up. But the ones that do want it are the ones that I found to be most confident in their own performance. Like if you're truly confident in your ability to deliver, a CPM model means that you have a lot higher earning potential than just a
Mm-hmm.
single video. So I work with people that recognize that. Now, how do I look for them? I generally look for them through two ways, two platforms, actually three platforms that I use. One is I'll just go through my entire audience list on my social. I post a story and say, hey, we're creating a paid creator program. We'd like to invite you to join. I send them to an Airtable and they fill it out. So I have an Airtable form of everyone that signed up, their social, their following. And I don't really care about following as much as the content that they make. And I always have a screening question, which is I ask, what do you think is the key to a successful piece of content? And I really get them to think about, okay, is it copy, is it a hook, is it lighting? And you kind of like know how they think about content just from that one single question. So Instagram is one. Then we also go through platforms like Incense. That's one. They do a lot of UGC content. Um, that one's like 50-50 on the people that are agreeing to, but the ones that have agreed to have been pretty well. And then the third one we use is Bounty. So Bounty is a platform that governs the CPM model. So you go on Bounty to create partnerships with creators where they would track the CPMs for you. So Bounty originally started as an affiliate platform for customers. So essentially, when you buy a piece of when you buy an order from a brand that is on Bounty, it'll send you a text and say, hey, Andrew, thanks for making this purchase. In a few days, you should get your order. If you would like to earn cash back on this order, just make a video and tag us. And they'll manage all that for you. So they have a creator marketplace where everyone on there knows that they would like to work on a CPM model. So you can scout for creators there.
Very cool. Starting to run a little short on time, but I want to ask you one last thing here before we get into our lightning round. And we talked about your product sourcing company, saucehouse.co. Talk a little bit about that, because I think some people, you love product, you hate numbers, right? Like I know very little about product and I love numbers. So for people out there who product is not their thing and they want to have a little bit of expertise, will help getting started. What do you do? Who are you good fit for? Give people the high level details on Sauce House.
Yeah, so Sauce House came out of our own product team. So I've had this team for 8 years now. We do sourcing, we do the management of the relationship, we do the negotiation, and this is not like a secret, but you generally get better pricing in the country that you're manufacturing from if you speak their language. And if you're manufacturing from China, we get pretty competitive deals. So because it works so well for us, we want to productize it to offer it to customers. But it really started off with just a friend who needed help, and I was like, wait, why can't you just do that yourself? And they're like, well, I'm a founder, I am good at marketing, I don't want to think about product. And I've noticed that a lot of early startups simply don't have a product team. They generally have a marketing team, they have an ops person, and maybe finance. But the founder is generally a marketer, and they have a good product idea. They just don't know how to make it real. So we're that team for it. So Andrew, you can come to me and say, hey, I would like to make merch for ECF. Merch is very easy. But let's go a step further. I want to make a blender bottle with a ECF pattern. And inside, instead of a blade that's sharp, I want blade that is circular. And I also want to add a Bluetooth speaker into it. Like we can make that for you. Like for you to do that, it's probably really hard. You got to piece it all together. We do that for you. And we get better pricing. We can do fulfillment for you too. We manage the relationship, and we also negotiate on your behalf. So the rates that we get for our clients are typically 20 to 30% lower than what you get on public markets. And the reason why we're able to do that is because we leverage our volume across our entire client base to negotiate with each of these suppliers. Let's just say that you need 10,000 mailer boxes. Or let's just say you need 2,000 because you're just starting out. You need 2,000 boxes to ship your products in. The one that sets your name and your branding and all that stuff. Your supplier's probably going to quote you on a 2,000 unit MOQ. We can get it on a price break of a 50,000 MOQ because all our other clients are also needing mailer boxes, and we pass that savings on to you. So that's our entire model, is that we're able to leverage our volume to get the best competitive prices for our customers and then handle the end-to-end logistics from the factory to their warehouse in the US. And if you really need to, we could do fulfillment for you too.
Got it. Great. Thank you. Saucehouse.co. That's sauce and then HAUS.co if you want to check that out.
Jason would love to cap this off with a lightning round. So as we do for all guests. So I'll give you fast answer or fast questions. Feel free to hit me with just, super one sentence replies. First question is, how would you describe the e-commerce environment in 1 to 3 words right now?
Really, really tough.
True. What's one of the fondest memories from your childhood?
Oh, fondest memories, Legos. I love building stuff.
Man, yeah, I said you had the Lego analogy earlier on in the discussion, so it's on the brain.
It's how I think. So the reason why I do that, and reason why I name my podcast "Building Blocks" is because the way that I think about building a business is brick by brick. If you have a really good solid foundation, you could build better things on top. Shaky foundation, everything shatters, right? I have a hard time understanding things unless I'm able to visualize it. So I like to use the Lego analogies because when I think about how would I build that, I think about in like blocks, block by block, and that's how I do processes. That's how I do products. That's how I do companies.
Got it. Makes total sense. Where do you live right now? And that backdrop, I'm guessing, is where your office. It's a beautiful backdrop. If you're listening on the podcast, there's just like, a gorgeous kind of like green sprawling in a nice way town. I don't know where
So
you are, but the
I'm in
backdrop's really
Orange
nice.
County.
Orange County. Okay.
Yeah.
Live in Orange County. If you couldn't live in Orange County, where would you live in the world?
Oh man, that's a good question. I would love to spend some time in Japan. Japan or Korea. I would say they are so far ahead in a lot of new product innovations and marketing that I would love to just learn there. Also China. China would be another place I would like to learn if you love technology.
What's your favorite product that you sell?
My eye mask. This is something that I will send you one, Andrew. So we make this silk eye mask, and everyone has silk eye mask, but ours has a gel insert inside.
Yeah.
So you could do two things. You can microwave it to heat it up, or you can put it in the fridge to cool it. But I actually don't do either because I'm lazy. I just wear it. But here's the thing. That's the third application. When you wear it, your body heat heats up the gel, so the gel is the same temperature as your face. So when you wake up, it feels like someone just cuddled your face when you take off your eye mask. And what that does is that it makes sure that you don't have puffy eyes. It depuffs your eyes. It makes the dark circles go away a little bit faster. You just feel a lot more refreshed. And I think that is the most underrated product in a lash company.
Cool. We will link up to that in the show notes so you can check it out and pick one up. Um, you're an investor. You've made a lot of tech investments. What's the best investment, the best company you've invested, and not from a team or a product standpoint? We're going to make it very quantitative, so you don't have to pick, say which child's your favorite here. But just from a raw ROI standpoint, like if you were going to mark to market, or they were going to liquidate, or there was a secondary or another offering and you could cash out. So your best tech investment you've made purely on a financial terms.
Triple well.
Triple L.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
What's the one that you've missed? Like where you look at it and you're just like, you turned it down, and in retrospect, you're like, oh, why did I do that? I should have jumped in on that one with like 2 or 3 years of hindsight, or even a year.
None actually. If I really wanted it, I would make it a mission to do whatever it takes to invest in it. I don't think I've turned down something that surprised me afterwards.
Okay, interesting. What's the hardest part of your business?
People, people are hard. You have to manage emotions. You have to manage expectations. You have to manage communications. As a leader, as a founder, it's
Hmm.
quite challenging because it's a different side of your brain to manage people than operating a business, at least for me. And needing to switch that on and off is really, really tough. And the same thing for relationship too. Like I have to turn off my working brain to spend time with my girlfriend, unfortunately. And I recognize that too. Um, because in my head, I'm just thinking about like, I need to be efficient. I need to like do this and that and that. Like my mind's just racing all the time. But in a relationship, you can't do that. And I recognize that. And it's tough for me to just get off work at 5. I can't get off work at 5. I'm working till I need to work. So I think that's the problem that I'm seeing in personal and work life is people is tough.
Yeah, it's hard. I think any entrepreneur listening can relate to that, having to try to turn your work brain off and failing miserably at it and getting called out for it too by your significant other.
Yeah.
Um, how much money in the bank is enough? So two ways you can look at this. You can look at it as either cash and stocks, so like
Mhm.
liquid net worth that is working for you, or you can look at it as an income that you'd just be guaranteed would come in for life, like an annuity. Let's say your investments were making X amount per year, and you knew that was guaranteed. So you can still work, you can still make more things. It's not like you have to stop working, but if you never made any more in the future and you only had X guaranteed, you'd be good with it. What would that amount be?
I'll be happy with a constant nothing below 10 mil cash in the bank. Because I think that will generally get me to do things that I want to do. And it's not like $1 billion I'm asking for. I think 10 million liquid cash is pretty attainable.
Yeah.
It's just all my money's in the companies that I have right now. So the idea of 10 mil cash just sitting there will be nice.
And you mentioned it would let you do things that you want to do. What are a couple of those things that you would love to do, or if you had that 10 million in the bank, you would do immediately that come to mind?
I mean, it's things I could do already, but it will make it easier for me to step away, which is spending time with friends and family, traveling and seeing the world and learning. I want to learn, but learning typically don't make you money. Like I want to travel and learn about culture. I want to learn about how people do things. I want to
Mm-hmm.
see my family, but the thing is that I could do all that already, but stepping away from a time where you could be making money otherwise is very hard for you to swallow unless you have that security in your bank, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
I came here as an immigrant. We didn't have anything. So the fear of going back to that stage of my life is keeping me from not wanting to settle or slow down. But in the process, it means that I cannot really build meaningful relationships. I cannot really spend meaningful time with family without my head being, okay, I need to fix this. I need to do this. Like I want to just sit down and spend time and not have to worry about money. And I cannot do that until I have either a consistent stream of income, which is typically hard for a founder, or some money sitting in the bank.
Yeah. Got it. Thank you. How many hours a week do you work?
85 ish.
Number one hobby, and you're not allowed to say work.
Go karting.
Go karting. No way.
Yeah.
Do you have like one of those like high powered go kart tracks close to you that's got the timing and like
Hmm.
that's very cool. How long have you been doing
Yeah.
that for?
A few years now, nothing professional. I also really like pickleball. Picked it up recently, but I love cars. So anything that lets me race behind a wheel, I love.
Nice. And then last question, you've been at e-commerce field for a little while here. Who's one of the more interesting people you've either met through the community or that you've just noticed online in the forums, noticed their posts? You're like, either that person adds a lot to the conversation or they have a really interesting business or just someone that stood out from your experience with the community.
See, this one feels like I have to pick my favorite child. Um, um, the thing is, like, I haven't really seen one name consistently, but that's what I like. I like the fact that I'm seeing one new thing from one new person every single time I'm logging on. Like, there's always someone new asking question. There's always someone new answering. And some other forums, it always feels like it's a group of three people that are always creating the content, and a group of three that's always answering. But for e-commerce field, there's not a single name that pops out to me simply because of how much new conversations are happening. And I think I like that more.
Great. Well, Jason, thank you so much, man. This has been a lot of fun geeking out on processes and AI and just everything that we covered. If you're listening, saucehouse.co. Make sure to check them out for all your product sourcing needs. That's saucehouse spelled HAUS.co. Jason also has a podcast too, which we did not mention. So, but www.bbclass.co/podcast. Can you give a quick little shout out for that? Because everyone listening, of course, is a podcast listener. So, what are you talking about over there, and how can people find you?
Yeah, it's called Building Blocks. The whole idea is to talk to entrepreneurs on the steps that they took to achieve either their brand or a certain cool marketing initiative that they had. Like we really get granular on how they did certain things. I like the series how I built this,
Mm-hmm.
and how it's made on TV back in the day. So I was like, okay, if I want to create something similar for e-commerce, this is what the podcast would be.
Nice. So make sure to check that out. And then if you want to look at all the investments that he has made, or you got a SaaS app and you want to pitch Jason, Pug.Haus. So Pug.Haus. So, man, Jason, thank you so much for coming on. Like I said at the top, it's been amazing having you in the community. You've added a ton to the conversation and looking forward to hopefully hanging out in person sometime. So thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Take care. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.